You want to know what happens when two pastors are driving along a highway and then all of a sudden notice a log coming towards them, have no time to move, hear a big boom, and pull off to the side of the road with no tire jack?
This sounds like a bad joke already.
All that and more on this episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. So two things that may have stood out to you in the introduction to the podcast. Number one is obviously the story. We're going to get into that in just a second. But number two is that I gave a name for this podcast. So this is episode 2, but it's episode 1 with a name. Blake.
Well, we had a name in the last episode. We just didn't know that we had a name when we recorded the episode. This was a ridiculous process that went on way too long, and now we have a name.
Now we have a name. Tell us a little bit about the name, Sweet Tea and Coffee.
Well, Sweet Tea and Coffee, it represents a lot of things. It's really, really deep, very deep. And I don't even know if I can explain it very well, but I drink sweet tea. I'm not a coffee guy. I don't like to participate in that addiction. And so Kendall, on the other hand, though, he's all about the coffee. All about the coffee.
Yeah, and it's frequently I don't know that I would say a point of tension between us, but it's a topic of conversation. And for the record, Matt also is maybe he's more of a Coke Zero guy, but
Zero,
he would be on the sweet tea side of things. But also, this is very deep, and we will stay super deep in this podcast. But it also represents our personalities a little bit.
Yeah.
The differences between us, but also there is some deeper meaning. It also is kind of representative of the kinds of conversations that we want to have, right? I mean, it's the kind of conversations that you would have with a friend over either sweet tea or coffee. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing. We want to sit around and ironically, today we're recording this podcast with neither sweet tea.
Neither of us have sweet tea or coffee in front of us. We weren't thinking that we were going to record. We just all of a sudden decided to do so. So
yeah, okay. So far that's been the pattern. When do we decide when to record an episode? I just shout from my office, Blake, let's go record an episode.
That's literally how it happened.
That's how it happens. Okay, so we teased a story at the very, very beginning that actually happened to us. I don't know when you're listening to this, but we took the kids to camp yesterday. So we're recording this on June 15th and took the kids to camp yesterday. And it was smooth sailing, which is surprising for a church trip with a bunch of youth. It was smooth sailing on the way there. Mm-hmm. And then we dropped the kids off and are headed back. And I don't know, tell them what you saw from your perspective.
So, it was a 6-hour drive down and a 6-hour drive back. And so we're prepared for a really long, strenuous day. And we got to that halfway point. We dropped the kids off. My anxiety levels while we were at camp were like out the roof. I was ready to get out of there as quick as possible. So we get in the van and we turn the AC on and we're like getting ready.
There was kind of this fresh wind in our sails.
Yeah, we put the jams on the CD player or the radio and got ready and took off down the road. And sure enough, there was a giant tree in the road. And not like a full tree, but significant enough to where
a significant portion of a tree that at one point was sizable.
Yeah, it's not something that you want to encounter in a vehicle going 65 miles an hour.
No.
And it jumped out and bit us pretty much.
I had no time. I was driving and no time. It was like I saw it and heard it smash into our vehicle at the exact same time is what it felt like. But the car in front of us was a big dually Ram, and so he just passed right over it. And we are not driving a dually Ram.
Our little Transit couldn't handle it.
Our little Ford Transit passenger van couldn't handle it, and we heard this massive noise. Well, so it gets okay. I mean, we've changed a tire or two.
Yeah, we're
before.
men. We're big, burly, strong men, and
That's
we can
right.
handle changing a tire on the side of the road when it's 110 degrees in the South Texas sun. That's no problem.
No problem. But unfortunately, though we are big, burly men, we do not have Herculean strength and cannot lift a vehicle without having a jack. And we discovered that our wonderful little Ford Transit, though it has comfortable seats,
Did not come equipped with a jack.
Have
it
a
came
jack.
Equipped with all the other tools to change a tire.
That's
but
right.
Not the jack. So
out I went to the highway and waved a friendly passerby down who stopped and gave us his jack and then said that he was late for something and for us to just use it and then put it behind a tree when we were finished. And so anyway, this is getting long, but the point is we got the jack and then were able to get the tire off. And then we had to get this tree out from under it was stuck in the axle of the vehicle. Anyway, crazy. So we got the tree out. And then we were on the road, and we were filthy and gross, and we had to go.
I mean, we looked like we worked at a tire shop, like we're just covered in grease and dirt.
And that was all of 10 minutes into our 6-hour journey home. So
it was a long day yesterday. We were on the road for a very long time.
And then we decided today that we will come in and now record a podcast. So if we're a little delirious, you can chalk it up to that. So
yeah.
Anyway, what are we getting into today?
So last week Kendall grilled me about my background in history and church music and all that fun stuff. So I hope that you were able to go back and listen to that podcast. If you haven't, make sure you do that. Today, though, Kendall gets put in the hot seat, and we're going to talk a little bit about his growing up in the church and where he's from, and maybe you'll learn something new about Pastor Kendall McDonald.
Okay, well, let's go.
Okay, on the last podcast, we talked a little bit about where I came from, and you know, I'm an East Texas boy, and we talked about how my family's been here a long time. Kendall, on the other hand, is a relatively new. I mean, it's new. You've been here quite a while now, but new to East Texas, as in the last decade.
Yeah, now coming up on 10 years, but for sure new to East Texas. I hadn't been to Nacogdoches before we started looking to move here, ever.
Well, that's just
Tyler. I think is as
sad.
Far east as I came.
That's just sad.
Yeah,
it's one of the greatest places on earth. But anyway, so tell me about where you grew up and just kind of what that was like.
Well, yeah. So I roll. I'm sure for the people that have heard this before, but grew up in. I was born in Conroe, but moved to Midland when I was pretty young.
Oh, so you were born in East Texas.
Is Conroe considered East Texas?
Close enough.
I don't know.
It's Southeast Texas.
It's basically just Houston, right?
Well, it used to not be that way, but yeah, so, okay.
Well,
wow, that is something new that I just learned.
Okay, it was
and
a short
my
stay.
Respect has gone up a notch for you now.
Yeah, so we moved from I was born in Conroe. Parents lived in the Woodlands, and then we moved to New Mexico, Hobbs, New Mexico, which is the thriving metropolis of Hobbs, New Mexico. And then pretty quickly after that, moved to Midland. And so I think I was 4 or something when we moved to Midland, so not very old. And then spent basically all of my childhood in Midland. We did move to the DFW area before high school. Right, but so I basically just did high school in DFW, and then moved, and I went back to Lubbock for school. So back to West Texas to do my university at time, and so I've lived most of my life in West Texas.
Cool. Okay, so tell me a little bit about what church life was like growing up. Was your family in church at a young age, or when you were younger? How did that play out?
It's funny. I kind of have this. I have a somewhat of a strange church background. You know, when you're growing up, your parents have it all together, and that's your perspective. And actually, what I didn't know, and only have kind of found out later in my life, is I've started to ask a ton of questions of my mom and dad. I grew up in a great family environment, and I grew up going to church, and I just thought, mom and dad are these super Christians, and. But anyway, like I said, just asking them questions as I've gotten older, what I didn't realize is when I was young, they were really, for the first time in both of their lives, they were getting really serious about their faith. That hadn't been really something that was super seriously pursued in their life or in their childhood. And so when Kelly and I, my younger sister and I, were born and were small, Mom and Dad were getting really serious about following Jesus, and we went to the First United Methodist Church in Midland, and so I grew up in that United Methodist environment. And that changed when we went to high school. When we moved and went to high school, that changed, and I started kind of searching around trying to figure it out. But that's how I grew up. So I grew up in the Methodist.
Methodist so you're
system.
gonna have to enlighten me a little bit about this, because I've been a Baptist kid my entire life. I did, however, go to a Methodist private school for like 2-3 years maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was really young. And my mom's family, actually, they were Methodist growing up, and her when she was a child. But that's the extent of what I know about Methodist. Okay. So you're gonna have to kind of fill me in on kind of that world.
Well, I mean, it was in so many ways, and I think that's why I'm so comfortable where I am now. But in so many ways, obviously, doctrinally and all that is very similar to being a Southern Baptist. But the church I went to, we did confirmation, which is a thing that is foreign to Southern Baptists. I was an acolyte, and that was a word that I remember I was telling this story one time in a context here, and everybody kind of looked at me funny like that, where you bring the light in to and light the candles to start the service.
See, to me that sounds like maybe one of the guys that like marched around Jericho, the Acolytes or something like that.
No,
some sort of Old Testament group of people.
Yeah, no, for sure it was not that, but it was actually. So I think we talked about this a little bit in the last podcast. So as an acolyte, so it was something that you did. When you were, I can't remember if it was when we were going through confirmation that this was part of your jobs, but anyway, it was a job that you got. I must have been 10 or 11 years old, something like that, and it was a significant responsibility. And you wore the white robe, and you had a candle, and there was a certain point you had this. It was this. Big long rod with this candle at the end of it, and there were always two of us to start the service, and it was just significant, like bringing the light. Obviously, super symbolic, but you would bring the light in, and to begin the service, you would light these two candles up at the very front, and anyway, so you would always have to wait, like everybody else would be in the service, and you're waiting till kind of this official beginning point. And I remember, and one time I was out in the foyer area, and everybody was kind of in there, and then all of a sudden, all these guys came in, dressed in suits, and clearly kind of outside of the normal box. Right. This wasn't just like your casual churchgoer that was coming in, and I didn't know who it was.
And this was in Midland still?
Yeah, this was in Midland. And I'm out there waiting to do my thing, me and whoever else was acolyting that day. And in walks this guy, and he just comes up to me, and he greets me. He's a super nice guy, just greets me, asks me how I'm doing, what I'm doing, tells me he's excited, for the service, and then walks in. Mm-hmm. Well, there's all this commotion. I didn't know who it was, and there's all this commotion after the service, and people are going, "Oh, did you see?" Turns out this was it was George Bush. Oh. Yeah, and so he, their family in and around Midland quite a bit. Yeah. I don't know that he's from there, but anyway, their family has significant history in West Texas.
This pre-president?
Pre-president.
Okay.
Yeah,
governor maybe, or before that.
It would have maybe been while he was the governor. I'd have to actually look that up. It would have maybe been when he was the governor. But I had no idea that I'd just met a future president of the United States. I didn't even know that I'd met somebody important. But anyway, all the people that were with him were, I guess, security and service people. Anyway, it was so yeah, that's a little bit of my
So I'm going to jump in and take us off course, because I have a George Bush story too.
Go for it.
And we can't have a podcast without a little bit of Roger Russell in there as well. He's just going to show up in all these podcasts. So when I was a kid, we would salesmen would give him free tickets to Rangers games, and this was early 90s, and we would go and get really good seats, like not far from the dugout. One day, and this is shortly after the not the newest stadium, but the previous stadium opened up. Now they've got a new one. We were sitting there, and there was a man sitting down and to the left of us, and Dad pointed at him and goes, "You need to get that man's autograph down there." And I was like, I don't know who this guy is. I had a little Texas Ranger baseball with me. He goes, take that ball down there and get his autograph. That man will be president of the United States one day.
Wow.
And we're talking, this is like 1992 or something like that. He wasn't even governor yet. He owned the Rangers at the time. And so sure enough, I went down there and got his autograph, and I still have that baseball to this day. So
Roger Russell,
he
knew.
He's got that insight, I guess. He can just knew that he was going to be president. So I've got a cool little piece of memorabilia from that time. So
what did you say? Did you just say, "Hey, my dad said"?
Oh, I guarantee you, I said nothing.
You just handed him the baseball.
I'm like a little 8-year-old. Here, take this ball and sign it for me. So yeah.
Mostly. I just looked it up. He was the governor from 95 until 2000.
Okay.
When he was elected the 43rd president of the United States. So yeah, this would have been probably right before or right in the middle
Somewhere
of all that.
there.
So yeah, there it is.
All right. Cool. Well, let's continue back on your story. I kind of derailed us there.
That's all right.
Okay. We talk a lot about in church culture, community, creating friendships and connections. And you've told me before that your parents had some pretty special friendships that were derived out of some of those communities and in the church. So I just would kind of curious to get your perspective on that.
Well, it was interesting because for me, growing up in the Methodist system, and I don't know that, I don't want to speak just broadly for every, Methodist church and every Methodist experience. This was just the experience that I had. But if you don't know anything about the way that pastoral work works in the Methodist system, everybody is basically an itinerant pastor, and this actually goes back to John Wesley and kind of his thoughts on how to start and grow and churches, and so they basically they send pastors to churches for a period of time, and then they move them around. And so, sometimes there are people that have longer runs at certain places than others, but all that is essentially done by the powers that be. And so a congregation kind of lives very open-handed with their pastoral staff. And I think that's a little bit different in Southern Baptist world. I think,
right.
We're very keyed in on who the pastor is, and that, and lots of churches, some more so than others, just really revolve around who that person is and personality. But I did not grow up that way.
Right.
But because of that, the focal point of church life was within whatever small groups. Now, this was before like home groups were a
Life
big,
group
but this was before any of that was a thing. And so it was Sunday school class. And so my parents, being young in their faith, they were really, really, really attached to their Sunday school class. And there's this huge group of people that were all kind of same age, but in this Sunday school class. And we literally did everything together. Now, part of that is small town West Texas. But the other part of that is that your community and your friendships, all of that was really based in your church.
Right.
And so, I remember as a kid for the high school football games, there's two high schools in Midland at the time, Midland High and Midland Lee. I think that's all there is even today. By the way, I met a guy from Midland the other day at church. Big shout out to all Midlanders. But
all right.
Yeah, he would have gone to Midland High, which is where I would have gone to school. Anyway, so we would go to someone's house, and it was chaos. We would all go to someone's house, all these families, and we would cook hot dogs and hamburgers on a Friday night, and then we would walk the few blocks away to the football game. Everybody had season tickets to the football game, and we just
together
all the time things like that we did together. My parents still to this day go on random vacations and stuff with that group out of that Sunday school class. They've all moved on. There's not many of them still in Midland, but they still keep contact. And it was just interesting how all of their church life was really built around that group of people, and they shared the ups and downs
Yeah.
of life together, tragedy and success, and all grew tremendously in their faith together. But it was really all about that class. So that was kind of and all of my friends were those people's kids,
Right, yeah.
and some of them, I'm still hanging out with even today. So just a very interesting church life, and my background and my perspective on smaller groups and community and connection and what that's supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important to kind of take note of. And we talk about church being a family, and what you just described is in every essence what a family is, what it looks like. I mean, you spend this time together, you share the ups and downs with each other, and I think that's key in understanding what church is even supposed to be like. We spend a lot of time focusing on the big gatherings and the worship service and things that we do corporately together in that sense, but I think it's really important to really hone in on what it means to be a family in even the small, intimate moments.
Yeah, and I think what was cool about that was that it didn't seem to me, and this was, again, the perspective of a kid and what I've learned growing up, but they weren't doing the things that they were doing because they were told to do those things. They were kind of from within the group. They were creating activity and building friendship. And I remember Mark Bearden, when he was here, talking about how friendship is really the essence, a building block of discipleship, that at the core of your relationship, there ought to be, deep and long lasting friendship. And that's kind of how discipleship moves forward, is in friendship. And, I saw that play out firsthand, and it was really powerful. It was a neat perspective to have. And then kind of coming into the Southern Baptist world, which can be more program based and heavy, but yet places a huge value on community and what that can look like. So
yeah, and I think that we're seeing more of that evolution of that, and really kind of cultivating that mentality and that culture. And I think that's important for the church, regardless of what denomination that they fall into. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to kind of get to wrap it up, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about some of that in the future. Just a point of, focus. We probably, by the time this podcast airs, hopefully this will already be taken care of, but Kendall and Matt are actually going back to pick up the kids in a few days.
And you better believe we have been to the store and purchased.
Yeah, we've purchased the jack. We did that this afternoon, and we're going to make sure they're well equipped to pick them up. But
that's right.
We're all going to be praying for them as they go down on Thursday.
That's right. Excited for them to come back. So that'll be a good journey.
But so thanks for listening. Again, if you've not heard the first episode, you can find it just above or below where this episode. If you found this episode, surely you can find the first episode. We're so excited about this. It's a lot of fun. I was telling a friend today that it's been fun to try to record these, and I hope that translates to you guys, the listeners. And we will see you next time.
Adios.
Hey, this is Blake. I just want to jump back on quickly after the podcast and give you a little bonus feature. Last podcast episode, we talked about how I was deep in writing and recording some new songs for the church, and turns out since that podcast, we have actually finished one of those songs. Now, that song is not going to be released publicly online until the fall, but I wanted to share with our podcast listeners a little clip of that so you could get a preview of what's coming. And my hope is that we are singing this song this summer and adding it into our regular rotation in the fall. But just wanted to share with you guys this brand new song, hot off the presses. This is called Forever Faithful. All right, have a good one.
Protector, our provision, a cloud by day, a fire at night. God, you lead us, we won't be shaken. true. You are forever faithful. Our trust is in you. Promise keeper, steadfast and true. You are forever faithful. Our trust is in you. Darkness, we were waiting, slaves to sin, without hope. But our Redeemer, you came to save us, to reconcile your children to you. Promise keeper, steadfast and true, you are forever faithful. Our trust is in you. Promise keeper, steadfast and true, you are forever faithful. Our trust is in you. Through the night and through our battles, we'll lift our voices in praise to you. When fear surrounds and death seems certain, we will declare this truth. Promise keeper, steadfast and true, you are forever faithful. Our trust is in you. Promise